Welcome, dear 10th class children. Now I'm back with the new chapter. This time the chapter is from Geography, Resource and Development. That's the first chapter. So this chapter is very important in terms of exams. Interesting, also at the same time very easy, right? Now we will begin this chapter. The first part of this video contains the resources and the types of resources. So it's a very easy one. You have learnt about this in 8th standard. It's just a continuation. So without any delay, shall we begin? What is a resource? Resource is a substance which has value, right? This you might have studied in 8th standard. Anything which has value, which has worth, which has utility can be called as a resource. But here we can define a resource as if anything that can satisfy our needs, technologically accessible, culturally acceptable, and economically feasible. That is called a resource. I'll explain you more about that one. Everything available in our environment and which satisfy our needs, which should be technologically accessible. Any resource, if it becomes a resource, that means it should be technologically accessible. You should be able to get it via technology. Culturally acceptable, it should be accepted in the society, right? Remember these three words, the phrases. Economically feasible. Feasible means it should be cost effective. You should be able to buy it. So if any substance passes technologically accessible criteria, culturally acceptable, technologically accessible, and economically feasible, that can be called as a resource, right? Now for example, like solar cooker. Solar cooker is technologically accessible but not culturally acceptable. We do not accept solar cooker. Normally solar cooker is not accepted in all the households, so it is not a resource as according to the definition. Now the types of resources. Now this is a pretty easy one. They are being divided based on these criteria. First is origin. How are they? Second one is exhaustibility. Third one is ownership. Fourth one is development. Based on this, resources are classified. It's a pretty easy one. I would say MCQ question will come in this part. We'll go for resources based on origin. There are two types. One is biotic resource, one is abiotic resource. What is a biotic resource? Obtained from biosphere and have life. For example, flora, fauna, fisheries, livestock, me, you, human beings, right? Abiotic, all the things which are composed of non-living things, examples rock, metals. Biotic and abiotic based on origin. I'll give you an example. Now look at this. This is biotic which has life. This is abiotic which doesn't have life. Right? It's a very easy one. Next one is resources based on exhaustibility. Exhaustibility is there are resources which we use which are going to be exhausted in near future. So there are two types. This is important for 3 marks. That is renewable and non-renewable. What is a renewable resource? These resources can be renewed, recycled, or the resource can be replenished. For example, solar and water energy, forest. It can also be further divided into continuous and flow. Water and wind are continuous, flow is natural vegetation and wildlife. Non-renewable is these resources cannot be renewed as they take million years to form. For example, minerals and fossil fuel. Fossil fuel, last chapter you studied about crude oil. Those are non-renewable resources. Once it is exhausted, it takes millions of years to form. Now, these are some of the examples which are taken: renewable: sun, wind, yes, water, and non-renewable: cell or battery, fuel, right, coal, nuclear. These, yes, non-renewable. This is renewable. Fine, pretty easy one, easy peasy. Now, these are the examples for renewable resources. You will see. If you are wondering what are these, you can pause the video right now and watch. Next type of resources are based on ownership. Now, based on ownership, there are four types of resources. One is individual resource, community resource, national resource, and international resource. Now, the resources which are owned privately by individuals is an individual resource. I own a laptop, I own a phone, you might be owning a phone. Then it is your resource, individual resource, right? If you have an iPhone, it is your resource. Community: the resources which are accessible to all the members of the society. For example, the public park, playground, which is accessible to all the members. It is not a personal property. We don't have a personal playground unless we are Ambani or a big shot person, but we don't have. So public park is accessible to all. We cannot say, we cannot deny the entry to a public park. That's why it's called a public park, right? It is owned by a community. National resource: the resource which belongs to the government. Technically, all the resources belong to the government. Even the public park also belongs to the government. Now, if you take an example here for the national resource, in the sea or in the ocean, nearly for 19.2 kilometers, or else can be called as nautical miles, the part from here, from our country's border to 19.2 kilometer, is our resource. Yeah, our fishermen can go there for fishing. What happens when they cross it? They will go to international borders, where they might be caught. They might get caught from international police. This happens a lot of times. When in Tamil Nadu, the fishermen from Tamil Nadu are caught by Sri Lankan police. Now, international resource: the resource belonging to international institutions. Example: oceanic resources beyond 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone. Now, this national resource is for 19.2 kilometer, whereas international is for 200 kilometer of the exclusive economic zone. My question here is, just find out what is EEZ, exclusive economic zone, right? That's your work for today. I'm not giving you much work rather than to write only the homework and the classwork. Just find out what is EEZ. You can comment in the comment box right now if you know it. The last type of resources is based on the status of development. Based on the status of development, there are four. First one is potential, second one is developed, third one is stock, fourth one is reserved. Right? Now let's see with the first one. Potential resources are found in region but not have been utilized. They are found potential, maybe for future. They are not utilized. For example, Rajasthan and Gujarat have potential for solar and wind energy, but not been used for some reasons. Now, potential in Rajasthan, I think solar is being used now. Gujarat and Rajasthan, it is being used now. Now it is being used. Second one is developed. Resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity is determined for utilization or ready for utilization. The development of resources depends on technology and level of their feasibility. So if they are ready to be utilized, it can be termed as developed resources. Stock: the resources which have potential to satisfy human needs, but there is no technology. We have not got the technology to use the resources. Stock. Like for example, water is a compound of hydrogen and oxygen which can be used as a source of energy, but there is no technology to use it, right? Obviously the example is saying that if we separate this one in the lab it is possible to separate. I know about that one. In the lab it is separate, can be separated, but on a large scale it is not easy to separate, right? Reserves, they are subset of stock, yeah, which can be used with existing technology but are conserved for the future generation. For example, like river water is used to a limited consent for generating electricity, so it can be used in the future. Not all the river is used, it's not used up. Some are kept for the future generation, so it is reserved, it is kept as reserve from the stock. Guys, this is just the beginning, so I did not want the content to pile up. So that's all folks for today. Today we just learned about what is a resource and the types of resources based on certain criteria. There are 4 types of resources, right? Now that's all folks for today. Thank you for watching, and remember, as always, read the textbook for more information. And always remember, if you have any doubts, please write